What's good, Sooner Nation and college football fans? It appears that ESPN is buying in on the hype on the Sooners. I know, right? Of all places, it appears that the worldwide leader in sports got a lot more faith in Oklahoma than most. Well, ESPN's dropped their football power index, as well as Bill Connelly dropping his SP Plus on top of returning production. And based upon all these numbers coming together, looks like Oklahoma has a really good chance to shock everybody else, but it won't be a surprise for ESPN. Let's dive into that. I'll show you what the numbers look like, and let's look at what things look like here in the SEC. Before we do that, welcome to Unfair Sports. I'm your host, Jay. Thank y'all for pulling up to the channel. All right, so Oklahoma has come in at a very nice spot here on ESPN's FPI. Let's pull that up. Let's dive into this. So the top 25 on ESPN's FPI, their football power index is basically, in a nutshell, 20,000 simulations of the games and just what the results look like. And this is how they rank as far as the powers go. And so for the most part, it also kind of tells you who they believe will be favorites in a lot of the games. And so ESPN here has OU right here at number 8. They are very high on the Sooners. You've got Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and Oklahoma. That's your top 4 in the SEC, with Tennessee and Missouri right behind them to wrap up the top 10 on here. So the SEC, of course, is dominating the top 10 here. And the computers feel like they really like the Sooners. And so when you look at that, I went through and I decided to just pull up the numbers myself. I'm like, all right, let me go see what these numbers look like overall. And so we'll lead off. We're going to talk about this FPI, and then we're going to start talking about returning production as to why these numbers look like this. So these are what the actual numbers in the charts look like. So this is everybody in the SEC. I went ahead, color coded everything so that we could really see what's going on. But as far as your power index, Georgia, of course, leads the way. You've got Texas right underneath them, Alabama, Oklahoma, Tennessee. And it goes down that same list that you see here, with Vanderbilt wrapping up at 76, right? But everybody in the SEC besides Vanderbilt is top 50 in the country. It's crazy here. Projected wins. So, of course, Georgia and Texas both have 10 on there. But Bama is at 9. Oklahoma, Tennessee, Bama and Missouri are 9. And Oklahoma and Tennessee are looking at 8, with LSU, A&M, and Ole Miss right there in the just under 8 at 7.9, and Auburn finishing out at 7.2. So winning record-wise, it appears that going from Auburn up, they expect all of them to have winning records. But Oklahoma sitting here at 8.2 is interesting. Definitely jump in the comments. Tell me what looks crazy to you all on this, right? I'm intrigued by what you think, because it got my attention here, because 6 wins, Oklahoma's at 92%. So we're going to win over 6 wins this season. So that's basically that. It's funny, Texas and Georgia at 99. And I'm going to explain why that's a little weird once we get into returning production. But winning the conference. So you got winning the conference. You've got, Oklahoma has a 5% chance, but playoff bound, 36%. Look at this. So from the All-State playoff predictor, Oklahoma is 9th in the SEC with a 37% chance, basically tied with Missouri and Tennessee to make the playoffs. They think that Alabama's definitely going to make it, but this is your top 10 as far as playoff predictions go. Kind of intriguing, right? Oklahoma's, I would think that Oklahoma will be 10 instead of 9. Because here with ESPN's, Tennessee's 36.9, Oklahoma's 36.6, but they're roughly in the 37 range. Oklahoma's 6% to make the Natty and 2% to win it. Now, y'all know me. I'm going to keep it a buck with a lot of this. I don't see Oklahoma making a national championship. I do see Oklahoma making the playoffs potentially. If the stars align perfectly, I would not balk at playoffs. But Natty, I need to see some proof on the field before I can even jump on a limb and say that, right? I wouldn't do y'all that way. I know I always keep it real. But the thing that got me here is why ESPN has Oklahoma so highly ranked. Why do they have them 8th in their power ranking? Why is, of all publications, they think that Oklahoma is the 4th best team in the SEC? This is why. Let's look at returning production. So I went through and looked at it. They had Bill Conley, who does this SP Plus for ESPN. He had the winter returning production percentages and rankings, and then he had a spring one right afterwards, right? And this includes your transfers. This is where things got interesting. So when you come in here, of course, Georgia's at the top. Their FP Plus, as well as their SP Plus, as well as FPI, the Football Power Index. They're number 1 in all of it. And their returning production increased from the winter to the spring after the transfer portal window. They're at 29th overall. That's a big jump, right? Defensively, they moved from 80 to 61. Offensively, they jumped about 3 spots to 22. But they're returning 68% of production, and that includes transfers from that's coming in as well as those leaving. So Georgia did a good job of retaining their people and bringing in more. On the contrary, the opposite side, you got Texas, who in the winter came in 25% of their production was coming back overall with 30 on O, 38 on D. And going into the spring, the offense production increased because they brought in all those wide receivers, but that defense dropped, went from 38 to 60. So the question has been about their defense. If you've heard me talk about Texas and anything about them, the question has been what their defense is going to look like going into the SEC, which is a conference big on what? Defense. It's going to be interesting to see, but they dropped. So out of everybody, only 4 teams in the SEC dropped. That was Texas, Tennessee, LSU, and Texas A&M. Whereas Oklahoma went from 67th in overall production because we know for the Sooners, we lost the entire offensive line. We lost our top receiver in Drake Stoops, who had the most catches and yards and touchdowns, and starting quarterback. So besides that, I mean, you're refreshing it, right? But that whole wide receiver room is back. We brought in Deion Burks. The running back room is still there. We brought in Sam Franklin. And then the offensive line is starting to gel. We brought in, you got Michael Tarkin as well as Spencer Brown, Fabichi Wewu. You brought in Branson Hickman, Gary and Hatchett, in which now he's healthy. You brought in a lot of players on the offensive line to replace what you had. And now B.L. Beatonbow's got something to cook with, along with all those freshmen. But that number jumped. They went from 67 overall to 54. Now, offense-wise, we kind of dropped. The Caden Green effect, on top of, overall, that percentage, we're still at 44%. We didn't really change much. They didn't really give us a lot from a lot of the offensive line acquisitions. It's fine. We won't knock them. But defensively went from 75% on the defensive side to 86% third. Dominic Williams, Caden Woolard, Des Malone, right? We brought in some good defensive players that jumped that number up. And this is why I think ESPN has Oklahoma as 8th in their list, right? The offense has a lot of questions. Granted, we understand that. Brent Venables is the defensive coach. If the defense can carry this team and the offense does just enough, they're going to finish top 10 in the country. That's the reason why ESPN has Oklahoma sitting so high. It's that. They expect Oklahoma to be good on defense because they're a Brent Venables coach team that in their rankings on SP Plus was 11th on defensive efficiency, which is a jump from the 50s they were the season before. So the expectation is there's going to be a massive leap on the defensive side. Heck, there's a good chance it's going to be a top 5 defense in efficiency. Easily. Because this is what Brent Venables does. So if you're bringing back the 3rd most production on the defensive side of the ball and you got a guy that knows how to leverage them and everybody's running in the scheme properly, there's a very good chance. I'm going to repeat. There's a very good chance that this could be one of the top defenses in the country. And the best part for this offense is that they're playing against this top defense on a regular basis. And you know that Venables is not, they're not backing off on Arnold. They're making that boy work for it. So, but looking at that production and what that looks like, and then of course, you know, like the tight end room, you got Bauer Sharp, who's him as well as Jake Roberts were two of the top receiving graded tight ends in the SEC right now. There's a lot of players to really think about and consider, and a lot of things. There's a lot of nuances to really think about and consider going into it. Like Tennessee dropping from 94 to 108 because, you know, I mean, they increased in offense, but they dropped a lot on defense, right? Losing all those defensive players, but they still got James Pierce, right? They still got the top defensive player, arguably in the country, who's arguably the number one pick probably next year, right? We're going up against, so Texas dropped, Tennessee dropped, LSU dropped. See, Missouri moved up. They went from 31st to 17th in returning production and bringing in players, 10th on the offensive side, 64th on the defensive side, which they actually improved on bringing in players. Yeah, that's a difference maker. But for me, I'm telling y'all, this is why Oklahoma is being considered by some of these publications and why they're paying attention to them, right? It's just that offense piece that's got to be proven. Once we prove it on that field, things are going to be lovely. So that right there is the returning production from ESPN and their SP Plus, as well as the FPI, all of the acronyms and all the stats. Hop in the comments. Let me know how y'all feel. What's y'all thoughts? Am I crazy? You think I'm right? Think I'm wrong? What y'all think about when it comes to these numbers? You made this far, like the content. Hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. We'd love for y'all to join this family of college football fans. We talk OU football, SEC football, college football in general, and we have a blast doing it. I'm going to do another video, and I'm going to dive into the biggest risers and biggest drops on these this production, because I think it's an interesting topic, but we'll talk more in a couple of days. Peace.